Well, hello there. Thank you for joining us here on World of Chaldea YouTube. I am here today with Eric Ray Anderson. Yay! Welcome, Eric.
Hello, hello. Great to be here.
Oh,
I always like to talk to you, Peter, and now we get to do it for ourselves and the people.
Yes. How much fun. So Eric Ray Anderson, if you don't know already, he plays the role of Maurko Hamilgrar in our series. And that has two sides to it. It is the narrator of our series. Within the Chaldea story, Maurko Hamilgrar in the future is looking back and telling this story. But he is also in the story as one of our lead characters, very similar to Bilbo Baggins writing There and Back Again, A Hobbit's Tale. And so Eric, what I want to do today is talk a little bit about like, who is Eric Ray Anderson? Like where did you come from and how did you get here? We'll do that for about, for half an hour maybe, and then we'll talk about Chaldea stuff and get into the joys and terrors of playing Maurko Hamilgrar.
Okie dokie.
So where were you born and raised? Where are you from?
I so far away. I'm speaking to you from Seattle, Washington, in the North Lake City area, and I came originally from far away in Tacoma, Washington, which is 30 miles south of here. And I lived in the same house growing up. My father taught geology at the University of Puget Sound, which was, 2 blocks away from our house. And my mother taught medical technology at St. Joseph's Hospital in the Hilltop District. So we lived in the north end of Tacoma, and it was the house I grew up in is the house I stayed in, and all the way through college. I ended up staying in Tacoma and going to the University of Puget Sound, where I didn't take any of my dad's classes, but we saw each other a lot around campus. And then I majored in theater there and just did lots and lots of. They did a lot of main stage plays there, and I was also involved in student projects, and my degree was in theater and communication arts. And then I kicked the dust of that cow town off my boots and moved 30 miles north,
To
and
the city.
that's as far as I got, really.
Okay, so you were into acting and theater right from the beginning then, right? From an early age. It's not something I mean, because you're like me, you're an older guy. You've been doing it this whole time for the last, decades now.
Yeah, well, precognitive even. I mean, there's my mom would tell me stories of taking opportunities to perform and volunteering to perform and stuff from before I can remember. I wanted to be a scientist like my parents, and so my career plans were always about becoming a marine biologist. And in the meantime, I was just, signing up for any, theater camp or class where I would end up performing one way or another. I just that was always I thought I needed a hobby, and I didn't realize I had one. I was so completely into it. So I've just been doing it the whole time. And eventually in high school and then college, kind of everything else fell away, and that was what I was doing. So I just continued with that professionally.
So did you always stay here in the Northwest, or did at some point did you like, oh, to really be in the theater, I gotta be in New York or London or someplace?
Well, I've I've been fortunate enough to do some traveling for regional theaters around the country. I'd like to do more of that. I'd like to have done more of that, depending on whether theater ever comes back. Uh, and it's really true that um, if you want to really make a living, you can put one foot in front of the other for a while uh, in theater and movies and stuff like that around here. But if you really want to make a career of it, you need to go to New York or LA, and I just never did that. Um, and there's a whole different version of my life that would have happened if I had uh, taken that route in my 20s or my 30s, and just tried to make everything about professional performance. But I've been able to piece things together here, and for a long time it was very important to be near my parents. Now my sister lives in Tacoma, and I've been talking lately about I don't know. Um, what it would be like. I've just lived all my life basically on Puget Sound, and I have no idea that if I relocated to a part of the country that didn't have any salt water anywhere, or not very much water in general. I everywhere I get to visit, I've done some traveling, and then I've done these theater gigs where I'm 2.5 months in some different city, and I always have a wonderful, wonderful time. But I have no idea if I would go nuts if I wasn't in this actual environment, because I've
I
been doing it. I've been here for so long.
Well, I know what you mean. I mean, this is a great part of the world. It's a great part of the country. It's I've I couldn't stand being away. For me, it'd be the mountains. If I wasn't close to the mountains that we have here, I don't know. I would really miss them a lot if we moved.
Yeah.
I love the Cascade Mountains. They're so rugged. They're so young and sharp and cragged, you know. And I love the water too. But yeah. So is there you know, you've described yourself to me as a character actor. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to admit any ignorance, but maybe if for somebody watching, you could explain what a character actor is and how,
Well,
how that
it's
applies.
it's interesting. I've been my how I started out was even as a little kid was as a character actor. I think, and people who are like that, and you know, basically what that means is either that your specialty is is kind of creating an unusual character that isn't you. Um,
Right.
or it means, and a lot of the times it means, you know, somebody who isn't a leading man, who is doesn't fit into ingenue or leading man type of characterization, and they just kind of look a little different from those stereotypes. And then eventually they get older and then they're Walter Brennan or William Demarest or somebody like that. And they're still kind of playing out of themselves, as we say, but they're kind of a strange character. And for me, uh, I just all of my instincts were about imitation and creation of characters. And I think it started from the fact that I just I loved movies and plays. I got to see a lot of plays when I was a kid. That was wonderful. And I just really glommed on to strange and distinctive
Right.
types. And so, some of my earliest training was, working on, I could do a good imitation of both Dick Van Dyke and Julie Andrews in Mary Poppins. And I just really, really enjoyed that. So when I started actually being in little skits and plays and things like that, I would want to be the comic. I would want to be the guy with an accent. I would want to be the guy with a funny walk. And I sort of discovered when I got into college, uh, that was my specialty. I played older guys. I got to play fantastic parts in college. I was very, very fortunate. Both of my big mentors from college are still with us. Tom Somerville, Tudor, and they put me in these. I played Wayne Fro when I was 19. I did one of the first productions of Buried Child that was done outside of New York. As the old guy in that. And so I got a lot of these. And I found out that when I would be cast as someone just playing myself, I did not know how to do it. And
Really, really.
that just sort of being a natural, ordinary guy, or someone my age, someone my type. I had so much fun doing the other stuff, and not just comic, but deeply emotional or hopefully honest, but just not me. And so I do remember painfully a few early roles I got where I was completely at sea. Now in recent years, I've gotten a nice mix of character roles and just basic what you see is what you get, naturalism, and I've learned to do that more. Most people go the other way around, though.
Right. Is there is it inappropriate for me to try and put you on the spot? Like, can you summon up an interesting character on the fly here? Or give us a
Well, one of the favorites I did was a guy who had a humpback and this particular speech impediment, and this was in a play by Eddie Levi Lee, and I found that I could just improvise in this character, which was really good because there were periods in the play where I had to improvise.
So I fall into that guy very, very easily.
so it was so compelling that I'm supposed to like talk, keep my eye on the camera lens, which is right there, but like you're acting here and my eyes have got to go down and watch you. That was so.
I'll show you. I have a.
Oh no, we're losing it. Where's it going? I hope it's a short commute. Eric, come back. Come back.
This is a photo of that role, and one of the things I liked about it was I had always wanted to have a role. I only ever cut my hair when I have to for some role or some reason, and so I always wanted to be able to have a role on stage where I had really long hair, and that was this guy. And so there's his what hump. And,
but it's not only longer; it's much fuller there, Eric.
Yes, there was more. There was more of it everywhere back in those days.
Oh, that's
definitely. It's harder. It's not as good a time for Zoom lighting as it was when I was a younger man, and then there wasn't any Zoom lighting, and now it just bounces off of this. And
that's great. So well, hey, speaking of Zoom, it's this last year working in a pandemic. For anybody watching this in the future, this was recorded way back in 2021 toward hopefully the tail end of the pandemic. What's pandemic life been like for you? Especially, I imagine it's really hard for actors and performers. So, I know it is.
Yeah, I definitely, like everybody else in the theater, I had to give up hope for plays, and also I'm a musician, and I had been playing a lot in one band in particular, the Klein Party band, and we were one of the last acts to perform at the Pink Door, where we had a actual regular residency, and March 7th was our last performance, and everybody was washing their hands like crazy and wiping down surfaces, but nobody was wearing masks. I think we were lucky to get out of there without getting infected, and so for the longest time, I just hung out, and I had just moved with my girlfriend, the wonderful Tracy Denham Adams.
Hi, Tracy. You're watching. Hello.
She might be watching somewhere. I'm not sure. She's in Ann Arbor, Michigan, being a grandmother at the moment, right. And being a new grandmother, and so I don't know. She might have had some work obligations or babysitting obligations or so. So I don't know. Hi, if you're there, Tracy. Anyway, we just moved at the beginning of the pandemic into just a roomier, nicer, quieter situation than we previously had. And we moved from being in the heart of things in Ballard, which is a neighborhood here in Seattle, to kind of on the edge of things in Lake City, where there's not really a retail district that's walking distance, and they're not so. We had just come to an agreement in January that we liked our new house for whenever we were at home, but it was kind of a pain because you couldn't get out and we couldn't walk to anybody's house that we knew. We couldn't walk to any restaurant we wanted to eat at. If you wanted to do anything, you had to drive to it. You had to drive to go work in a coffee shop, which is something we both like to do. So we were weighing the pros and cons. And then suddenly it was like, you're gonna be home. So all of the cons went away, and everything that was left, we are in this wonderful domestic setup, and that really worked for pandemic living. And for a while, I wasn't doing anything outside of the house like most people. And a friend of mine, and once again, this is about the opportunities for connectivity that have happened with artists being challenged by the pandemic. These friends of mine, Terry Wiegand and her pal Julia, used to host a variety show in Seattle many years ago. And now Julia is here, but Terry is in New York, Brooklyn, I think. And they just, that first time of lockdown, a lot of creative people really just said, well, we've got to do something. And they created an online version of their old variety show and said, come do things. And first week, I just did one song. And then after that, for over the next several weeks, I got into really creating music videos. There was a loose theme to all these variety shows for each week. And I started, I got in touch with one of my favorite music collaborators, a drummer and singer and multi-instrumentalist and videographer. Amy Zoe is her name. And we started working together making music videos. And that was just incredible. And that was like a full to part-time job, uncompensated, of course, but I just gave myself, and we would just spend hours and hours and hours working on these things. And I was really happy with how they came out. And it was an unexpected creative outlet. And I learned a bunch of stuff I wouldn't have otherwise.
Now, are you still doing them?
We've done two more things in collaboration.
Now, are these on YouTube or something? Maybe somebody watching
they are.
Know where to go?
They are. You can. It's smorgasbord. It's kind of a funny spelling. I'll put it in the comments or something like that. But also all of my performance pieces are the name Eric Ray Anderson is included in them, so you can track those down. And another thing we did was when in October, when COVID restrictions had relaxed and they were soon to come roaring back because people are idiots. But the COVID restrictions had relaxed, and one of my favorite places to perform is the Jewel Box Theater down in Belltown, right near you at the Rendezvous. And I used to host an open mic there, and Amy and I worked together on an online version of the open mic, where it's called Uncle E-Ray's Mic-less Open Mic. and the idea is that it's all acoustic. Everybody, balances their own voice against their instrument and so forth, and there is no amplification.
Right.
And and we got a group of people to keep appropriate distance in that space, and then we moved around, and each performer was in a different location
Right. Right.
in this larger space and doing an acoustic performance. And that was really, really fun. And then about a month later, after everything had been shut down again, we broadcast that, and that's still available on YouTube. Uncle E Ray's Miceless Open Mic, and Uncle ERAY apostrophe S. And then there's another variety show that happens on the holidays that I've been kind of the one of the main people they reach out to for musical stuff. That I'm always or not always, but often the house band. Me and some pals are the house band, and that's called uh, uh, Christmas B-sides and rarities. And so once again, I linked up with my friend Amy Zoe and her friend Michael, whose name I'm forgetting. Sorry,
So,
Michael.
so you're so you're not making much money, but at least you're working.
That's exactly right. Now I have in my one of my alternative income sources is handyman life, and mostly painting. I paint people's rooms and stuff like that, and I've been able to do a good bit of that in circumstances that feel safe, and people we keep we're all masked up, and we keep distance when we have to be in the same room and say, I want this blue and I want that red, and then it's okay, I'm coming over tomorrow, stay in the basement,
Right.
and some of that has worked out okay. And then I've had a little bit of work with this web series called Chaldea, where
Woohoo.
every once in a while you need me to record a little more copy from home, and then that becomes a certain amount of ducats, and that's been
Yeah.
good. I've had a couple
So,
of good Zoom auditions for movies and commercials. But I haven't gotten any of those, so I don't know what it's like to work with COVID protocols on sets. But some of my friends have been having a good time doing that.
well, thank you for mentioning Chaldea. Maybe we should transition and talk a little bit about Chaldea. Did you get a chance to watch? I don't know. Steve and I kind of started the conversation in some sense. I think we on Monday released the director's commentary version of chapter 4, where we spent a fair amount of time talking about you.
Yes, I completely indulged myself in paying attention to what sort of things you had to say behind my back, as it were.
Is there anything you would like to refute?
No, it was all you were beyond diplomatic, and it was
We'll have to try
it was
harder next time.
I love hearing nice people say nice things about me, so it was fun to listen to. And it's always fun to hear it's always fun to hear you, Steve, talk about the background of Chaldea and how it came to be, and the Cordovan informant and the background of all that stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember we talked about your audition. Well, it wasn't really an audition. I mean, it was we talked about when we brought you in for voiceover.
Well, I tend to think about that as I remember that to some degree as an audition, but although I didn't meet you at that point, but I often I don't have a sophisticated sound system at my place like a lot of voiceover artists do. And so I would always, and one of the reasons for that is that I'm just kind of old fashioned in some ways. It's like some
Really?
people say, well, if I can, gosh, if I can audition for things without ever leaving my house, well, that's so much better. But I like going to my agents and saying hi to those people. That my agent is Topo Swope Talent, by
Yes.
the way, if anyone's interested in chasing me down professionally, I will
And
say that out
specifically,
loud.
Tim Christ there, who is a
Yes,
joy,
specifically
joy to work
Tim
with.
Christ is who I work with most directly, but Topo as well. And anyway, I just really, before we were restricted to having to stay at home, I would just show up, and I get a lot of invitations to audition uh, voiceover ads and things like that, and I wasn't on a real successful run of landing any of those things. I would get the occasional TV show or movie, but the voiceover stuff was not catching fire. And I think it comes down to that the just the character acting stuff, because I just really remember being given this copy was stuff that we used the first time we worked together, which was the War Room
Right.
film.
Right. Just to catch everybody up who might be watching this, what Eric's referring to is that chapter 3 is called War Room, is the name of the chapter. And we did that chapter first, and we did a sort of shorter version of that chapter 6 years ago. We kind of thought of it as a pilot, but I can't really call it a pilot because it was episode 3 instead of episode 1, and we ended up adding a lot of stuff to it. But anyway, it was sort of a test case for us, a prototype, if you will. And for the role of Maurko Hamilgar, which at that time, we just thought was a narration role.
Mm-hmm.
So you showed up.
Well, I went down to they sent me this copy, and I just had, in retrospect, it feels like I just was confident about it having, as soon as I read it. But the main thing was, I might not have gotten the part, but the main thing is I looked at that copy and I said, I know exactly what this is. This is the reflective halfling, as you say. He's got a little bit of Bilbo Baggins and there and back again, and it needs to be this sort of reflective. Well, one day the da 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 happened, and I was only a mere writer, but I try my best, and I want you all to know about this and this and this, because it's very important that you know what I think about this. And it's just, I just like totally knew that guy. I know that guy. I mean, for one thing, it's Ian Holm, and it's actually my guy is influenced by all the British Ians. Ian and Ian, who's the guy that plays Gandalf? I'm forgetting his name. Ian. Sir Ian McKellen.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there's always, I'm never not influenced by Sir Ian Richardson. So he's in there too. Though he's not the same sort of character type as those guys, but that's sort of plummy and a little bit smug and self-important, but really a good fellow. And right. So I just knew what it was, and so I was just delighted when I got it. And but I got it. There was no need to meet me because it was not visual, right? It was just you listened to the voice recording,
right,
and said, we want that guy.
And
So I
so,
didn't meet you
yeah, I
until
think,
I was actually working on it.
yeah. So like you said, that was before we met. So it must have been, you went to Topo Swope, did the audition recording there at Topo Swope, sent that in. We said, yes, we picked you without having met you. And then we met for in real face to face when we both showed up for the actual recording at Bad Animals, which would have been in December of 2014.
Hmm.
And
Boy,
and
that
that
was
was the story for Steve and I. You know, I think I didn't really remember the audition piece. I know intellectually that that happened because that was the process, right?
yeah.
Um, I don't remember that as much because it's easier for the director. You just sit there and listen to all the auditions. There's no stress, right? And then it's but when you get to the recording, then it's like, okay, big deal. And Steve and I were there, and you walked in, and by the time we got to that piece of it, Steve and I were already reflecting, you know, maybe this will be more than a voiceover role, because we were starting to see that we wanted Maurko Hamilgrar to be a character in the series, not just a narrator from the future. And then there was already a lingering thing of like, well, what if this guy doesn't look like what we envisioned for Maurko? You know, and then you showed up, and Steve and I were just like, oh my God, yeah, that's Maurko. Not only did you have the right sound and the acting that came through during the audition, you have a great look for Maurko. We love you.
Well, it's been really fun. It's a unique experience. Well, every once in a while, in the theater, costume designers, when they know the cast ahead of time, they will sometimes make a kind of a cartoon of you when they're drawing the costume design. But when I first saw this image of myself sort of turned into a graphic novel character, it's just so delightful. And I will say that's something else I really love about being in the very special position of narrating every episode, is just to let the people know how this works, is I'm actually most of the time when you're doing a voiceover thing, or even voice acting where you're in a scene, you're just looking at a piece of paper. And what's great is that for just the way things worked out for most of the narration work I've done, the the uh, the art for the episodes is finished, or 90% finished, and then I'm actually reading the little captions off the art itself. So what's really great for me is a whole bunch of the cast of Chaldea, which
Yeah.
is mostly voice actors, are friends of mine. So every once in a while, an image comes up, and I say, "Wait a minute, is that Mariana DeFazio? You know, is that
Yes.
is that Victor? You know?" And and they are, and that almost all of the graphic novel images are based on the real people. I get a bunch of joy out of it. One of my best friends in the world is Amber Wolf,
Oh, yes.
who
Oh,
I'm in a band with, and
yeah.
sings. Actually, she sings in two of my bands now,
Yes.
bands that I'm in,
Oh, she's
and
incredible.
I forget the
We're
name of her
all
character.
in love with Amber. I mean, she is
Yeah,
great.
and so here's this cartoon version of my friend Amber that's just really great. So yeah, I get to do that stuff, and that's really, really fun.
Yeah. So I'm curious, did you happen to hear the story? Steve and I related the story of David Faubert's audition. So for anybody who might not have seen this, the director's cut version of chapter 4, when we talked about this. So David Faubert plays Oddvard Stigvard, which is the owner of the Graven informant. So Eric's character's boss. And so when we did the audition for this character, of course, again, we listened to a number of auditions, and these auditions are are posted online.
And this was actually filmed, right?
Yes, it would have been filmed. Yeah, because it
Yeah.
wasn't a voice. It was yes, that's right. It wasn't.
Right.
It was filmed. And so,
So-
when you do these auditions, the film shows the actor acting out the role, but there's a reader who's reading the lines of the other character in that particular scene. And so we're like listening to this audition, and Steve points out to me, "Hey, I think that's Eric Ray Anderson reading the lines behind behind it." So you knew David Faubert. What was your memory of that story?
Well, this is how that came to be. Is a lot of us, in the community, obviously, but based on the stories I was just telling about, all the different cartoon versions of some of my best friends keep showing up in Chaldea, and we often help each other out on auditions, being the reader, being the off-camera voice, and usually part of that is also being a sounding board for making decisions. So we often like to invite, not just someone who knows how to read words on a page, but we often invite another actor because A, they know what the deal is. They know what we're trying to do. But B, also it means we can kind of, help each other
Right.
dial in the best performance. So David had, and he and I had been in, we had gotten to know each other. I knew him by reputation a little bit before this, and I think he did me too. But we ended up in a show at Act Theater, kind of the previous year, where we were brothers in a Sam Shepard play called The Unseen Hand. And so we had a fantastic time playing an older and younger brother. And we still sometimes call each other by those names and so forth. And so he just called me up. But I think he knew at this point, the only thing I had done for Chaldea is that one, the War Room thing that
Right.
had been a voiceover, and that had done, and I knew that my guy would show up again sometime. But then a couple of years went by, right? Like a whole couple of years went by, and then suddenly we're
after War Room, we said, okay, yeah, we really want to do this, and then we kind of started over. Like we knew, like War Room was like one episode that, like, it kind of planted a flag that we knew we wanted to build around, but we had to go back and write the script for like the first full season, and really, it took a couple 3 years before we called you back, right? Yeah.
So I think that now I was pretty confident that if Maurko needed to show up again, well, I would be invited to do that. And I knew a little bit about the project, and he knew that I knew a little bit about the project. So he said, you want to help me out on this? I'll buy you lunch. You come to my house, I'll put it on tape. And I said, okay. And what was funny was I don't think the name of the character had ever particularly lodged itself in my mind. It was just that halfling British narrator guy I was doing.
Right.
And so by the time I was looking at this thing and it said Maurko on it, I did not recognize myself as being that character. I was just the other actor in the scene, and we spent all of our energy kind of helping Dave dial in his intentions, and so we we did a lot of working on it before we actually put some takes on tape. So I was, if I'd known, I would have been using my voice and my accent but I was just kind of like using this voice that that I
Sure.
grew up with,
Right.
going, hey, Otto, you know, you can't make me write something that's not true.
Right.
And, but he was working on his
Yeah.
Hessian accent, and anyway, it was really hilarious when I heard later from you that you were really leaning toward you thought that was a really good audition that he did, and you were leaning toward casting him, and that there was because I'm using a really different voice. Steve remembered my voice just from talking between takes.
Yeah.
And so
Well, yeah, Steve remembered it. Like I had already, before I realized that you were the one delivering the other lines, I'd already decided I liked David Faubert for this role. And I mentioned it to Steve because we're co-directors, so we always compare notes. Sometimes he has a strong opinion about something. Sometimes I have a strong opinion. Sometimes we might disagree and kind of work it out a little bit. And I remember telling Steve, I like David Faubert for this. And Steve goes, yeah, but did you hear? And then he pointed out that it was you in the background. And then, of course, he couldn't unhear it once he said that. Oh, yeah, that's definitely, even though we'd only met you that one time and it was 6 years ago, but we had listened to your voice many times, of course, on work and stuff like that. So
yeah, and then the other key player in the in the deal, I'm the editor, and Dave plays the publisher, and Michael J. Smith plays Sprex, who is
he's your foil. Let's just be really straight about that, right?
Yeah, we don't like each other, and he's a reporter that I would love to fire, and my boss does not want to fire him for a variety of reasons, and so there's constant conflict and stress open conflict between me and one of the people under me that I can't fire because the person over me won't let me fire him.
Right.
And Michael is someone that I don't think we ever worked together, but in the 80s and 90s, we were, especially the 80s and maybe early 90s, we were all up in each other's business. We were both working at the Pioneer Square Theater and at the Empty Space Theater, and we knew each other really well. So when it came down to it, for us to record those scenes, and then Kate Wisniewski was also there that first day we recorded.
Right, she plays Heike, the office manager.
She's a great friend,
right? Yeah.
And these were both the people that I got to act with were both great friends that I had a really good time playing off of. And when later we came to shoot the live stuff, with the three of us got together, and it was very comfortable for the three of us to get together and kind of rehearse those lines together, so we were for shooting when we actually did the live shooting. And anyway, it's great to work with
and in the live shoot, you were joined by Sarah Moore, who is our social media princess here in Chaldea, who plays.
Hi, Sarah. I know she's watching.
Yeah, she's monitoring our chat for us, and we work together just about every day. We're working together a lot, and also Deborah Lynn Powers, who played Tilly, your character's assistant. So. Yeah. So I can't. What do you? So I'm curious. How do you describe? Well, you did a little bit of describing Maurko earlier. What do you find challenging about playing Maurko, or what do you find interesting about playing Maurko?
Well, the main thing, it's actually a little hard to articulate. The main thing is that you know, when you're an actor, sometimes you work inside out and sometimes you work outside in. And the idea is that whether you have an objective idea about what kind of a person this is, and then you inhabit that, and then you start to understand them from the inside, or you have no idea objectively, but you start to explore their inner life, and then something comes out. Eventually, both those things have to meet. And in Maurko's case, it was outside in, because I knew exactly what kind of guy the writer, which is you and Steve, wanted him to be. And so I just did that. I just served up that particular sort of reflective halfling. And then and then he you know showed up. He showed up in me because I knew what I was trying to convey, and the you know the accent is one I'm familiar with. I'm every once in a while I embarrass myself listening to passages, and I say, oh, I missed that. Oops. But for the most part, that sort of plummy standard English is something I've been doing for fun and profit my whole life, and then I just really I don't find it too hard. Um, he likes to make, as a narrator, he likes to make a particular kind of impression on his audience. And the fun of that has been being the kind of person who, when telling a story, doesn't lay back. He dives into it and really puts a lot of effort into painting with the words in order to really lay out for his audience how he feels about things, and
Right.
and that he inhabits the moments. He likes to inhabit. If something is very, very scary, he likes to become scared when he talks about it. And if something is amusing, he likes to, well, there were only two of them. What was to be done? And I just that's using my that's how I like to do it. And there's different schools of thought. There's different kinds of narration that is laying back and letting the words do the work. And neither me nor Maurko is that kind of guy.
Right.
So fortunately, when I really lean into that with all that personality, which is all understood from the point of view of his intention, he wants to make that particular impression on his audience. And I just get encouragement for you guys, so I just keep going that direction. And then as a character, it's all very clearly drawn. The conflict is clearly drawn. He's in a very particular situation. He is by nature an academic. He was only ever going to work in academia, and somehow he got headhunted by Otvard Stigvard, who is the publisher of this newspaper, and who wanted to sort of raise the standards of the paper and get it away from tabloid sensationalism and get a little higher standards. And so obviously we had this off-camera conversation where he hired me to do that, and then he only half means it, as it turns out. So there's this constant shifting sands of me trying to hold him to what he told me he wanted to do. That's what the scenes are all about, you know. And 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 so I'm just trying to do what he told me he wanted to do. And, you know, he kind of won't let me, especially in terms of having this old school tabloid muckraker, you know, drama, you know, exaggeration machine, Sprex. And so there's just this constant layer of frustration with that basically has is accompanied by an image of how fine it would be if everything was going as it was supposed to.
Right.
You know, I would have the staff that I wanted, and they would be very intelligent, reasonable people. And you know, anytime things get important for Otvard, he tries to talk me into doing something entirely different than I thought I was supposed to be doing. So that stuff is, of course, you know, when you have clear conflict and relatable dialogue, then, you know, the job of an actor is really, really easy. And so it's not, you know, when we filmed, it's not easy being on a film set. It's hard work every minute, but it's also, you know, the understanding what's going on and what the character should be up to is not the big challenge, you know. It's just really fun. And yeah.
Well, yeah, and I would love to talk about the film shoot, but we're going to put
Great.
it off. I promised you we would, but we're not going to because we're out of time.
Oh, okay.
But we're the film. I just so anybody that's watching knows there is a live action film that we already filmed that is a set in the Carnarvon Informant offices. In fact, I'm on the set of that behind this mountain, just over the pass on the other side of this mountain is a set. Where we filmed Maurko along with a couple of with the other cast members, with Poppy and Sprex and Otvard and Tilly, and it will be in the next block of episodes that we release after this current in season 1.2. And so Eric, I promise you, when that film comes out, we will have you back and we will talk about the joys of that film shoot, because it was a hell of a shoot. For one thing, it was really hot.
Oh God, it was hot.
And you were wearing layers of clothing.
It was like 5 days, and I had little pointy ears and
all this forced perspective stuff. But yeah, when that film comes out, we'll have you back, and we'll talk about how we did some of the Peter Jackson style filmography to have you interacting with you know, how do we make Poppy, Sarah Moore, who's about half your height, look like you were half her height? That was the trick.
I have a wonderful picture from that shoot of that is basically a screen grab of me and David, who is basically, but we're pretty much exactly the same height. We look eye to eye, and we've got one of these forced perspectives where I look half his size because we were each talking at tennis balls,
right,
instead of each other.
Well, Eric, it has been. Oh, by the way, we just got a Steve thinks that that you could write Maurko. I'm going to squeeze that in. One quick question for you, Eric, before we leave.
Yeah.
You have an amazing command of the English language. You help us actually dial in a lot of the prose.
Thank you.
Steve and I both really respect did you study English in school? And
I did study. I did have a lot of English classes, but I've always been a real freak for language, and mainly I got to work. I I love Shakespeare, and I especially love the dialogue of Shakespeare, and how precisely wonderful the writing is. And I got to work for several years on a project called the Young Shakespeare Workshop, which was created by my friend and mentor Ed Call, and his idea was to get high school students to better understand things about the English language by having them work on Shakespeare. So we got a lot of, theater kids in there, but the main thing was to have kids that wanted to learn to increase their sensitivity to language. So that was so we were working on Shakespeare scenes, but we were definitely leaning on it from that direction. And that really, that turned me in from a person who already loved poetry and good writing and idiosyncratic means of expression and stuff like that, into someone who had, I've spent about 3 years really deep diving into that stuff. So, and I'm a big podcast head, and I listen to a lot of podcasts about language too.
Well, it shows. And Steve made a comment in chat that he thinks that you could write Maurko.
I think there's a handful. When you had me do that crazy character that I played once, there's a handful of parts. I'm not a big improviser. I'm not someone who identifies as an improviser, but there's a handful of parts that I've played that I feel like I can improvise them. I know how they express themselves. Right. And I think Maurko is one of those guys. I often describe what he's like, and in order to do so, I have to make up some dialogue because the page isn't in front of me anymore, and I feel very, very comfortable just talking like him, as I'm sitting around hanging out with people.
All right. Well, on that note, we have to ask you to stop talking, unfortunately.
Okay.
We have to
I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do one more plug, which is I wanted to emphasize that my band has been performing live streams in lockdown, and we had to take a break from that. But it's the Klein Party is a super fun band that I'm in, and it's thekleinparty.com or the Klein Party on Facebook, and all those shows are archived.
And it's Klein with a K, right? K-L?
Yes, Klein, the Klein Party.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on our YouTube channel today.
Yeah, it's great. I look forward to the next opportunity to do some work together.
We're going to have some voiceover for Zane 2 in a few weeks. So
great.
We'll be chatting again soon.
If you enjoyed this,
my name, look up the number.
If you enjoyed this broadcast, you can support the channel by subscribing and sharing our videos on social media. Follow World of Chaldea on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And be sure to visit worldofchaldea.com for more videos, concept art, and behind-the-scenes content.